Well, good morning. This is the September 21st, 2023 meeting of the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee. We have one member who's coming in as soon as he can get here. He's stuck in traffic. Changes to the agenda. We have two resolutions that we should add. One is the appointment of the Tompkins County Consolidated Area Transit Board of Directors, and the other is the recommendation, I guess there's actually three, recommendation for appointment to the Board of Directors. Why do I have two?
Because we have to get ready to reappoint Frank for another term, but Lisa
Oh, gosh, that's right. Okay, I understand there's two, that's right, there's two vacancies.
Lisa is going to be standing down because it's become extremely time-consuming to be on that board.
So anybody objection to adding those two? And then we have the resolution that we talked about at our joint meeting to obtain cost estimates for the public safety building. Objection to adding that? Any other changes to the agenda this morning? Do we have any public comment this morning? I don't think we have any. As for my report, I would just reiterate that we had a joint meeting with the Public Safety Committee since our last regular meeting of this committee. We discussed, the purpose of that meeting was to discuss the report that had come in from Public Safety and the working group about recommendations for programming and changes for a public safety building. And we'll be taking more of that up in this committee as we go along. The other thing I would point out is that our chair, Shauna Black, has determined to form a downtown facilities committee with respect to the Center of Government building after a vote of the legislature to proceed with that. And so that will be out of this committee from here on. That committee will have 7 legislators on it and will have its first meeting in, I think, the second Tuesday in October. Randy's going to be chairing that. Randy, you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, just that the first planned meeting is October 10th at 9 a.m. I've had a couple of legislatures ask for those early meetings, and I'm fine with that. And we can talk to see if that's the right schedule going forward. And my thought was to start with looking at our timeline and go from there.
Thank you. That's all I have. Yes, Lisa's here this morning, aren't you? Good morning, Lisa. I hope you're feeling a little better.
Morning, Mike. Thank you.
You want to go ahead with your report?
Sure. Be happy to start us off. And I know Norma's there. I think I saw Jay and Katie. Yes. And Megan can also fill in. So the steps taken regarding the sale of the Red House. First of all, backing up, I wanted to say that the deconstruction of the dental building is happening now. I believe it began yesterday and will be taking place over the next 2 weeks. And then in the meantime, staff have worked to clarify with the city the minimum lot size needed in terms of the zoning for the Red House, 408 North Tioga Street, and determine that lot size, which we have sketched out in a draft map that would be included in an RFP for realtors. We have drafted an RFP to go out to realtors with asking for plans with which they would market the property, and that's the option. That is the option by which they could entertain options for ground lease. So that RFP is in draft form and is about ready to go out and would be able to go out by the end of this week. And I think that's where we are.
Let's pause for questions. Deborah.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I do hope you're going to get better soon. So do we have to subdivide the property preparatory to selling the red house and whatever the lot size you've determined?
We had some internal discussion about that with staff here, and Jay, if you're available, you could please feel free to jump in. But I think what we wanted to do was put the RFP out and determine, with the lot size that we determined, and entertain offers based on that. And if there were offers that varied from that a little bit here or there, it would enable us to entertain those offers and subdivide once we determine
what they want to buy.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Randy, okay, Greg, then Randy.
Thanks, Lisa, for the update. And I think that makes a lot of sense to review what they're offering before we go through the steps to make all those decisions. I just want to bring something up that Legislator Dan Klein sent Mike actually to you and I this morning. Probably didn't get a chance to see it yet.
I didn't see it this morning.
But he sent me a text on the way in. We had a conversation briefly, I think, at a legislature meeting or during some comment period, either in this committee or another, about having an opportunity to potentially review what the intended use was, or what the potential buyer would be wanting to do with the property, and being able to make a decision on which one we went with based on sort of what their intended use was. Is that something that members of the committee would be interested in? Is that something that is possible to be done? I know, Dan used the library place as an example. I know that's a much different scale, much different idea of the process they went through with that. But is that something that can be done where we could review the intended use of any potential offers that we would get to decide which one made the most sense for us to give up, this parcel for some sort of intended use? Or would we be able to weigh in at all on that?
I can say it's not currently, the RFP is not currently drafted, that we would be asking realtors to solicit the intended use from the buyers. It's something that the committee could weigh in on and determine if you want that type of transaction, I think.
Andy?
Thank you, Lisa. When do you are requesting that the realtors respond by? After the RFP is out, how long do they have to submit their proposals?
I think it's usually 30 days.
I'm
Through
sorry?
the purchasing
30 days.
office.
30 days.
Usually 30 days.
30, okay. So that's going to take us to the end of October. I like the idea that Greg is proposing, in that, if it's we're just looking for money, the highest offer, then I wouldn't even go through this process. I'd go through a process where you would submit to all realtors, submit your offers by such a date, and with your highest price, and it's a done deal. Whereas if we're going through this process, then I think that we should ask what their intended uses are, because we may decide that it's not the highest price that we're going for. So those are my thoughts.
Lee?
Is there any stipulation in here that the red house remains? I mean, that was really our purpose in holding on to the property, or in not moving forward for using it for county purposes. I guess it wasn't so much about the dollars, it was about the intended use of the location. So it's an interesting question.
Do you want to respond to that, Jay, before I get Deborah?
No, I just want to point out what we did with the Boardman House when we owned that property. There's a provision now within the deed that if the Boardman House was ever demolished, fired, demoed down, that property would then revert back to us.
For a price?
No,
Oh, really?
Reverter.
correct. So that's something we may want to consider here as well, and that may stop someone tearing this down if they were to buy it and find out that they couldn't use it for something.
Deborah?
Yeah, let's remember how we got here. I mean, we bought the red house as part of a package deal. We were going to do something on that property. It had, I don't think, ever been our intention to tear it down, because we understood that it had historic value and it was subject to preservation restrictions. But then everything got delayed and the house started to deteriorate. And the reason we couldn't use it was because it was so expensive to fix it. And we couldn't tear it down because of the position the city was signaling it would take. I think that considering the purpose that somebody wants to buy it for should be a factor that we consider. I do not think it should be determinative. I don't think anybody's going to buy that house with the idea that they're going to tear it down, because they're going to run into the same kind of pushback that we did. And they don't have the advantage of being able to make the argument that we had as the county, that we might have some governmental balancing test we could use to get around the city's refusal to let us tear it down. So yeah, I think it's important to consider what purpose somebody wants to use it for, but I don't think it should be the only thing we consider. I mean, we've invested a lot of money in this. I think it should be one factor. I'm not going to take a $500,000 haircut on the thing just because somebody has some laudatory purpose. And I don't think that would be fiscally responsible on our part. But I think realistically, we're not going to get an offer from somebody who thinks that they've got some plan in their back pocket to tear the building down, not under the circumstances.
My comments, back to what you just told us, Lisa, is that, first of all, we are the county. We are not subject to the city's requirements here for a subdivision approval. And I don't think we have to have an approved city lot here. We've talked on this committee for several months about this, including the possibility of retaining easements or giving easements to the property owner and trying to reserve as much of the land as we could. And that's also the reason that the issue of the ground lease came up. And certainly this idea of reverter would be a good one if this committee and the legislature is not inclined to require a ground lease, which I think it should. The other thing is, if it goes to a realtor, I'm assuming the realtor will put it on multiple listing and will not just, we aren't going to give a particular realtor the exclusive right to sell on that without the ability to have it multiply listed. So I really would like to see what this plot looks like. and I'd like to have some input in what we're actually going to offer. Randy?
I agree with that. I assume we're selling this as is, whereas this is all the information we have, this are the reports that we've done,
Yes.
and take it as it is. Is that the plan?
Yes, yes. And I can share my screen to show you the draft lot size. Okay.
So there's just a driveway width on each side, is that what I'm saying?
And
It seems to me that that lot is taking a huge chunk out of the real property we have.
course
The
it
area
is.
in the back could be an easement for parking.
or we could
The
just,
area in the back, I see what you're saying.
also just rent space.
I know
I didn't hear that.
Katie had discussions with the city on this. Katie, I don't know if you want to weigh in on what you were told.
Yeah, sure. So this is, I think, probably just to try to attract a buyer that wouldn't have to go through the quite lengthy and extensive city process to get variances to have use of this property. So they're very strict about their lot coverage ratios, and this map exactly meets the lot coverage ratio. They want it 40% or less. This is exactly 40%. We went out and measured it to make sure we got the correct number in there. Even with this design, it's likely that we would need to try to give a driveway access easement with the curb cut off of North Tioga Street on our property, because the city typically does not authorize curb cuts right next to each other in the city. It just makes for complicated traffic patterns, I guess. And the other dimensions here are just meeting the minimum requirement for setback, rear yard and side yard. Front yard, it does not meet the setback, but it's a historic building that there are many properties in the city that don't meet front yard setback.
And I'm guessing there are probably many properties that don't meet backyard setback either. But, again, what we're talking about is slicing out a big chunk of what we want to have for our purposes in the future. And I don't feel very good about exactly what you're showing here.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
Katie, you mentioned that they would need variances for use?
Yes.
What variance?
If it's less, they would have to go through, if we sold less than what's shown here, to use it, yeah, they would need to go through the area or the coverage lot variance to be able to use the property, is my understanding.
So if the city doesn't approve that variance, they essentially have a building that's just going to sit there and continue to deteriorate.
And we have an unsaleable property.
That's the thing, I think that's exactly
But
it,
we-
Deborah. I think you're creating an unsellable property.
So what use is it zoned for currently? And why
it's-
would the use change?
It's got a bunch of different uses that it could be used for. City zoning is very, very complicated, I will say that. And so there are different parking requirements for different uses. You could use it for residential, you could use it for professional offices. And it's a whole list of things that could be used for, and they have different requirements based on the use. But all of them need to meet these minimum setback and coverage requirements.
But if we're not changing the use, they still have to seek.
What she's saying, though, is that
I hear what you're saying, Deborah. I understand what you're saying. I don't need clarification on that. I'm trying to to understand its current use and why the city would require a zoning variance if someone were to use it for its current approved use.
I see Megan's hands up. I think she might have something to add to help clarify. Oh, you're on mute.
I think the critical thing here would be that we are creating the lot now. And so if we are creating, we're creating something that from the get-go is not conforming with the city's regulations. And so if we're not providing a lot that meets their minimum lot size, then we have what in the subdivision process, we will be creating the problem ourselves. That's why they're not concerned about the front yard setback. That is something we're not creating. That's the existing condition. But we will be creating this lot. And so if we're not already from, out the gate creating at least, no more than 40% lot coverage, that would be a problem for anyone trying to use this property.
But to Greg's point, it's the city saying this property can't be taken down because it is in a historic district. It's intimated, as Deborah said, that it would object if we took it down. And so if we keep the rights in the backyard and maybe along the north side, what are they going to do? I mean, they're going to say, okay, let it sit there and deteriorate? I don't think that's going to happen. This is the city's, you want to do what the city wants to do, but the city wants to keep this building. So I'm not thinking that that should be our problem.
I think this may affect the willingness of a buyer to come forward because the buyer would be taking the risk of, having to seek variances with the city. So that's just, if we're creating a lot that doesn't already, meet the city standards, then a buyer is going to have to take that into consideration, what risk they're willing to take to make an offer on the property.
That happened with the old library site. The buyers had to go to the city and the historical commission, both of them, to get approval for their project over there. Randy?
Thank you.
Deborah first, okay.
I think we're getting things mixed up. Yeah, the city doesn't want the building to be torn down, and apparently they can enforce that despite the fact that we're the county. But the lot size and the variance, the use variance, are inextricably intertwined. If we make a lot that's smaller than the city minimum as shown on this map, then we are putting a potential buyer in a situation where they have to get a use variance. That is not something we want to do. It's not like we've got something to sell that everybody's lining up to buy. I mean, let's remember, this is going to be a building that can't be torn down. It's going to be a building that needs substantial investment to bring it up to any kind of useful shape. We don't want to add the variance complication because that's a crapshoot. I just don't see, we've decided we've got to sell this thing. This is the minimum lot size to make it saleable at all. I don't understand what all the pushback is.
Well, Deborah, I know in the last meeting you were objecting to the idea of a ground lease because you'd had a bad experience sometime with a ground lease. And we're trying to figure out, some of us are trying to figure out how we can protect the county in this situation.
I don't think we protect the county by creating a lot that makes the building unsellable.
Just to clarify, would it be a use variance or would it be a lot coverage variance? It's
Would
not
be
the
a
same
lot
thing.
coverage
It'd be
variance.
what? Lot coverage variance.
Would be the coverage variance.
Yeah, a use variance is essentially impossible to get past in the city, but a lot coverage variance is something that they weigh in on regularly.
Except
They do, and they frequently deny them.
100%, but in this case, it seems like the priority of salvage the historic site is a priority for the city and its constituents. So the benefit to the public would would outweigh, so I don't know. I feel like there's a case to approve the variance. Mike Randy's got his hand up.
So, thank you for the information. So, is the side setback, is that 10 feet? Is that what that measurement is?
Yes.
So it wouldn't allow any parking on the side, because that would not be enough. Take that parking out. And they're going to need cooperation from the county to have access. And so we would have to do some type of thing where we would merge our driveways so we don't lose as much space, those kinds of things. It's gonna, whoever buys this, it's a minimum of $500,000 to update this thing. So they're gonna have a huge investment. And if that's the minimum lot size, I'm comfortable with it, so.
Anyone else? Lee?
Clarification. So the north line, where I can't read that, but 86 feet, 88 feet, thanks, Jay. That's 10 foot off the building, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the parking that's along that north side to be continued as parking, if it's part of that or whatever arrangement we make, it's gonna extend into what's left of the county area. And then the driveway that accesses both places because of curb cuts and practically what's there right now is gonna take our useful area that much further north. And I'm just pointing this out. So, we're shrinking as a consequence, whatever useful spaces for what we're left with on the dental building site, correct?
I don't believe so, Lee. You would park parallel with the building, not perpendicular with it. So at 10 feet, that's
Really?
more than adequate to have a driveway come in. Just for point of reference, we have a 7.1 foot driveway easement for 109 Sears Street where that white car is. So that should be more than adequate to park right next to the house. And that's very common in the downtown area. You just get across the sidewalk and that's where you park.
But that's kind of presuming, Jay, that it's more of a residential use. I mean, the way the parking is now, it's not perpendicular, it's 90 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see this
But
being.
for the purposes of creating the lot to sell, yeah, conceivably. But practically speaking, would anybody want that building unless they could put a number of cars in there?
Exactly.
I would be absolutely opposed to giving an easement over the rest of our property for access to this for a driveway. A temporary license might be possible if it was necessary, but beyond, and I'm sorry if the city won't give them a curb cut. The city ought to give them a curb cut or expand that driveway. Again, the tail is wagging the dog here. And the city is, we're just kind of saying, well, this is what the city wants. Well, what about what the county needs? Let's talk about that. That's what I think is more important. Greg?
Yeah, I also think it's interesting too, because the true use variance comes in our surface parking lot that we're creating by taking down the dental building and changing the use, which I know surface parking 10 times out of 10 is not an approved variance in the city. So it's just interesting to see our position on variances in the same parcel right next door to each other seem to be, it's okay for us to create surface parking, which is a complete use variance, versus some variances that may be required here for this parcel.
I don't think we know that it's completely okay for us to turn it into surface parking. I think correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, but that's still a question that hasn't been answered.
You're correct, Deborah. I mean, yeah, I do think that we do need to think about perhaps putting some screening up, some plantings along Tioga Street when the Baker building comes down, so that it'll mitigate some of those impacts. One other point I wanted to make with this map, just so you understand the full picture of it, that green dot that is right in front of the proposed parcel on North Tioga is a nice egg power line. So I guess you can move poles, but that would be another complication if you tried to get a curb cut through there.
Well, where do we go at this point? I think there's, Lisa, you're hearing there's some concern on some of the committee members. I think we have two that are pretty happy with what you're suggesting. I think you've got at least two that are questioning it. And I'm not sure where Lee is on it, frankly.
Well, we need to move forward.
Yeah, we don't want to, we need to know what we're selling before moving forward with realtors. So I don't know the answer to
I think we need some options, and maybe from the realtors, including the ground lease, including the possibility of selling it without a ground lease, but reserving easements and parking on that. I think we need some options. Maybe the realtor will need to come up with that. Maybe rather than saying this is what we're going to sell, maybe we're going to, when we select a realtor in this process, maybe we need some feedback from that organization.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Mike, actually, in terms of next steps is I think we need a realtor advising us at this point on the market and how to market this property.
Well, I thought that was what Lisa originally was proposing before we had this discussion.
Yes, yes, but with the idea that this was the minimum lot size, if we are varying from that, I mean, we would need to factor that in. I mean, we can still move forward and get the advice of realtors about minimum lot size and the variance that would be needed and the appetite from buyers for that. That could be another variable that we put into the equation when we're talking with realtors and when they are marketing it to the public.
I don't know about other members of the committee, but I'd like to be a part of whatever discussion, once you've focused on a realtor, I'd like to be a part of the discussion when that is going forth.
I thought we were trying to sell this before winter set in.
Well, we may and we may not be able to sell it. We kept it last winter. Randy?
So on the RFP, is it okay with everybody if we say this is the proposed lot size when we present that to the
No,
realtors?
I don't agree with that. We could say possible lot size.
What do you think a realtor is going to come back and do? Tell us the highest and best use, or are they presuming it is one usage now as a private home or commercial space? What answers are they going to give us?
They're going to say the more land you give them, the higher price you're going to get.
Maybe, maybe not.
Not necessarily.
We bought a square foot. We bought this space on square footage. We paid $1 million, what, for this?
$1 million too much.
Yeah. So the value is the land. So in the city of Ithaca, it's priced square foot. So, I mean, in my mind, if the people doing the homework said this is the minimum lot size, then I think that we go with that.
Yeah, you mean like the people that we hire to tell us what zoning law is and
Right.
what property values are, yeah. Yeah, I would think that they would be the people we would listen to.
All right, so we're giving direction for her to go ahead with trying to do the RFP?
With the minimum lot size.
No, I don't agree with that.
Let's vote on it
Let's
then.
take a vote.
Let's vote on it, right. I agree.
So can I say one thing before that, if that wasn't a call to question? Because I guess there's no question even on the floor. I like the idea of a licensing agreement. I mean, Jay or anybody else, rather than an easement, does that carry different value or weight, or that essentially doesn't encumber the property that we're giving them? We could still do minimum lot coverage, but we could say you have a access, but we could revoke access after a certain period of time, or if our needs were to change, and then they would have essentially street parking, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to defer to the real estate attorney here for that, but yes, but the one thing with that brings into question access to the property. So anytime there's uncertainty or risk for a buyer, that's going to weigh into their decision buying it. Sure. So if you only have a limited license to park off-street, that may cause an effect on value. But one thing we're also seeing is that in this area, you don't really need off-street parking as well.
You don't need?
Excuse me, you don't need off-street parking.
Oh, you don't need off-street, yes.
So
okay.
there is adequate on-street parking or close enough by, even with the parking meters, that it hasn't really affected the market value of those properties. But it's more desirable to have that off-street. But
yeah.
the easement would more run with the land, and you would have to guarantee, similar to the easement we have for the 109 parking space. There actually used to be the easement where it came in off of Tioga Street. But then the prior owner was able to adjust that easement and gave them a little bit more land on the side of it as opposed to the back.
So we've had a request for a vote on whether we say this is the minimum lot or not, or a possible lot, or a proposed lot, or whatever it is. Deborah wants it to move forward. Of course, that's what Deborah wants, and maybe that's what Randy wants. I don't know about the others. So how many want to go forward and say that this is the lot we're going to sell, or whatever? All those, raise your hand. Those opposed? That's 3-2. All right, you got your direction, Lisa.
Okay. Thank you. It's still an estimated minimum lot size, and we'll, once we work with realtors and entertain offers, we'll be bringing it back for, further discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, do you want to go ahead with the center of government process? Is there anything you want to add to that, other than I already mentioned there's a new committee?
Yeah, I think we will be moving forward. We have the space studies, the updated space studies that were conducted by Bolt in the summer of 2022 with the potential departments that would be moving into a center of government building. We have those as starting places, and I think that that's a place for the downtown facilities reconstituted committee to start from. So I'm just happy to move forward with that and work with that committee and work with the potentially impacted departments to provide information for further consideration.
Okay. Anybody want to make any comments at this point? Lee?
Couple of questions. It's raising some eyebrows, so that's good. You've got a committee that'll be answering the questions. Do you know, in the scenarios, the maximum number of employees that might go on this site, Lisa? Have they added up what the department numbers are?
Yeah, that's included in the space study. I don't have it off the top of my head. There was a range given, and that range is in part dependent on whether we consider moving the Human Services Annex current staff, from Office of the Aging and Veterans, and put that lot back on the tax rolls, or not. So if, there's a cost benefit ratio to be determined there as to what we've put into that building, what we may be able to sell it for. And so if we decide to leave those departments in place, we could go for the minimum, the smaller option in terms of a building size.
There's probably what, 20 people down in the annex, give or take. The Department of Aging and Veterans.
Maybe 15, yeah.
Okay. And then the other question is, we've had, just as you're starting down this road, Randy, we've had a number of estimates that have taken us 20 million to 40 million and something in between. One thing I'd be interested in, and I don't know how that factors into the discussion, but I'm sure part of what's driving the price is how we make the building compliant with our energy goals. And will there be options within this as far as selecting the mechanics and types of infrastructure and heating, or will we be quantifying the number that adds to the project? And it's an open-ended question, but it's something I'd be interested in, because I am involved with another project where we're having to balance those various interests. And I got to thinking about this the other day, and if it were, God forbid, $40 million for a 40,000 square foot building, that's $1,000 a square foot we're looking at. If you're looking at 100 employees in there, that's $400,000 per employee. So I'm just trying to, as we move the project forward, understand these pieces and the fiscal implications, and just throw that toward the committee to factor in.
Deborah?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out what this is going to cost us myself, but I did see an article about that new building that Cayuga Med built down there near Green Star. Apparently that is a 68,000 square foot building, and it came in at about 35 million. Now, I don't know what the cost differential is, because I know that there are different labor requirements and compliance, ADA compliant stuff that we as a public entity need to meet versus Cayuga Med as a private. But on the other hand, they're a medical building, so I think they may have a lot of the same restrictions that they have to meet. How big a building have we been considering, square footage wise? Can someone remind
I
me?
think the max was 45, around there, 45,000, and it was 28 to 45 or something like that. It's a range.
I don't think we ever made any determination about whether we're going to go 3 stories or 4 stories.
Right. But it's generally cheaper to build up than out. So I've just kind of, in my mind, used that Cayuga Med building as kind of the benchmark for what our costs are going to be. With regard to the energy thing, I think we asked Darrell about that at a previous meeting, and what he said was we weren't going forward right now with our ground-based, the geothermal, yeah, thank you. But the buildings that we put in around here would be built so that if eventually we did put that in, we could transition our energy source to geothermal.
So maybe I can jump in here because I know Rel's not available today.
Thanks,
so,
Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Yeah, so I think one version of what's been discussed is to do what we would term a district thermal network or a district geothermal system that would encompass the new center of government building, as well as trying to encompass the current building that we're all in, the old jail and the courthouse all together. So that would be one potential option. And there is, good federal and state funding for doing projects like that. And our hope is to try and do some sort of scoping feasibility study in the next couple of years on what that might look like and what the cost would be. The other option would be to do, an individual system for that center of government building and then, do a district system for the other, buildings or do individual things there. So I think we're evaluating all the options. We're going to work to try and see what makes the most sense. The only other piece I'll throw out there on the building itself and the mechanicals is, it is our hope to bring forward a new green building policy and hopefully next month. So that would obviously have an impact. And so that'll come before this committee and you'll have a chance to weigh in on it. So, we're trying to design it to have flexibility. The one thing that we're trying to make it align with is the county's goal of getting off of natural gas and moving to net zero emissions. So that would be kind of one guardrail on one side, but otherwise I think we're trying to leave it somewhat open in terms of what are the other possibilities.
Randy?
Yeah, I think Lisa's right. Looking at the space study and the departments going in there is really a very important first step to design the building for its use and for space. So that makes sense to me. And I'm sure that we'll all scrutinize that completely, as well as the cost. I think that we'll all focus very carefully on the cost of every step of this. And even thinking about the flood zone, and although this is not in the flood zone, is there an impact that we should be concerned about? Those kinds of things that we have to have. And as Terry mentioned, I think that, we'll analyze, the soils, we'll have consultants come in and tell us what we can and can't do and what it's going to cost. And so I'm sure that all those steps will be scrutinized by all of us all the way, because we're concerned about the cost of things. But there will be many moving parts. And one question I do have for Lisa, though, and we can talk about this maybe in the meeting, is do we have sufficient staff that can support us as we need? So think about that a little bit. Terry obviously is here and Arel, but it's going to take a lot of work by a lot of people to keep these parts moving. So.
Your point is well taken, Randy, and it's the same the same people that we're calling on to do many things. But yeah, I will consider that question.
Lee?
Maybe this is a question for Terry. When you're considering the geothermal, is the ground amount of ground space an issue you have to deal with? I'm working on another project where the geothermal system looks like it may have crashed on us from the standpoint of unusable land underneath where it had been proposed. Can you run the coils in other places and attach them? Are you going to have the space to do something along that line, depending on how you set the footprint of the building?
Yeah, I mean, some of this is something we're going to have to determine when we start to look at the feasibility. If we're trying to do a large system, it's obviously going to take more wells, and the amount of wells that you can put into a specific area is, measurable. One thing that we have discussed with our neighbors here, the churches, is possibly joining together with them and using possibly DeWitt Park as a potential area to put some wells into, and then being able to connect all of us together. That's a possibility, but otherwise it would be looking at essentially the parking lots or possibly the footprints of the building. Increasingly, you are seeing some geothermal wells being put under building footprints. I don't prefer that for a few different reasons, but I think then it would be looking at, in terms of our parking lots, what are we able to do in order to put enough wells to cater to buildings? And in that in and of itself might determine whether we're able to do a district system or to even do a geothermal system for the building, or if we have to explore another opportunity like what we're doing at the mental health building with a VRF system, for instance.
Deborah?
That's an interesting option. Terry, would our neighbors chip in some of the cost?
It's possible. We've had conversations with at least one of the houses of worship, and they've talked with the other. And so I think they're considering it. And I think we've had some positive overtures to them already on that case. I think a lot of this, like I said, is going to be taking a look at what all the funding sources are available. And right now there's a pretty significant amount of funding from NYSERDA for detailed engineering and construction of these systems, but not for the feasibility. And so we're trying to figure out how we can get a feasibility study done just to let us know whether what we're thinking about is even possible or not. So hopefully we'll have more to come on that in the upcoming months.
Interestingly enough, one of the cathedrals we visited in the UK, I think it was in Bath, they've switched their cathedral to geothermal, and they make a big deal about it, about how much money they're saving, and it was just kind of interesting. I guess if you can do it to something that's hundreds of years old, we might be able to figure out how to do it here.
Yeah, there was a big story a few years ago. I think it was St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City did a geothermal system there as well, and has seen a lot of savings from it.
Yeah, thank you.
You may end up using that dental building area for installing it. The only open area left.
That's a great idea.
And of course, this committee had extensive discussions about the IT requirements for the downtown area, and the idea of where we're going to locate that and how it's going to be, it only can be moved once. It's going to be terribly expensive to move it more than once, we were told.
Right.
And do we put it in the center of government building? Do we put it in the old jail, for example? What do we do? So those things are all going to have to be discussed further. And I don't know whether it'd interfere with this, with the pipes and other things that are necessary for geothermal or not, or vice versa. So that going to take a study.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the discussions on this Center for Government Building will overlap into this committee as well. I mean, it's just going to happen, so. Yeah.
The geothermal certainly would.
Okay. Anything else that you wanted to mention on this, Lisa?
No, I think that covers it.
I think I wanted to bring up, based on what's happened after the last regular meeting of this committee and the subsequent decision by the legislature, we need to demolish the Key Bank building. We didn't really have an opportunity to discuss the future use of it, and so that seems to be the way we're going, full steam ahead. I do think we passed a resolution that said we would deconstruct the legal building as soon as the leases were up. I'm not positive about that, but I think we had a resolution to that effect. So I'm going to ask that we have a resolution for our next meeting to authorize the deconstruction. Because if we're concerned about deterioration of the Red House, we ought to be concerned about the deterioration of the Key Bank building. So Lisa, would be able to have something like that?
Sure. I would have to go back and see if we actually did pass the resolution on the.
Okay. If not, then maybe we could have them both in one
yeah.
resolution.
Okay.
But I know I thought we did, so.
Okay. That would come through this committee, F&I, as opposed to the downtown facility?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Just a question.
Go ahead.
This may be for Megan or Katie. Going back to the historic district and the implications did we determine that we could take those down without any affront to the city at this point?
My interpretation is that there are legal steps that still need to be taken, and I really would like Holly to take the time to weigh in on this. I don't believe we did the Monroe test, the balancing test for this parcel. We did it for the 400 block of North Tioga, but not the 300 block. And so separating out deconstruction from construction of a new center of government might be problematic, in which we need legal opinion.
We have had discussions with another attorney. I'm thinking that we ought to get that attorney to handle this rather than to ask our interim attorney to go into that issue, because I don't think she's been involved with it before. But we have talked with the attorney, and I can't remember his name.
The guy from Syracuse?
The Syracuse attorney. So that would be my recommendation.
And yeah, I guess the understanding was that we couldn't deconstruct those buildings unless and until we had a commitment to go forward with the center of government. The real question seemed to be how definitive those plans had to be. Is it enough for us to say, yes, we're going to build a center of government there, or do we have to have like a site plan and all that other stuff?
I would say that's a question for the land use attorney.
I agree.
Okay, who's going to follow up on that with that attorney? Is Holly, you're going to ask Holly to follow up on it with that attorney?
Yes.
And
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, anything else on this issue? Don't think it'll be taking up so much of this committee's time in the future. Facilities, I think Lisa said that Rel is indisposed today because of other requirements of other government, but at this point, I'd like to move into the discussion about the clerk space here, and I understand that Katrina McCloy is going to talk to us about that. You've got a handout. When you're ready, go ahead.
Okay, Orel was going to be here and help me do this, but he decided not to, so I'm on my own. In 2020, I did a handout of the version that we kind of came up with in 2020. One of the options was to build a small office in the back corner, and it was temporary but semi-permanent, something that would work for office space for the fourth clerk. And it can be removed once we have other space available, depending on what other decisions are made. And that was the plan that I had passed out. At that time, the cost was approximately $10,000, and I do believe that would have come from Orel's budget. I did email him to see where the cost would come from this time, and I haven't heard back, so. At that time, that was the plan.
So would it have to go into the legislature budget now? Okay. We'll take it off Shauna's travel.
Okay, does this include furniture?
This does not include furniture, but I did walk through the key bank with Orel a couple weeks ago, and I just put my name on some furniture that would work in that space that was left in the key bank building, and it was nice furniture, and I think it would be more than adequate for that space.
Nice to go through that building again before too long, just to see what they left.
Does this have a door on it?
It does. I think on the second page, it's a sliding door.
It will reduce the seating we have for the public considerably.
Will it takes one window, right?
Yeah,
get to that
the way this
first.
is drawn, it's right at the edge of the window.
Probably move some of those chairs. We could put another couple rows of chairs down here. And I noticed that people are rarely over on that side.
How much use are we getting out of that table over there?
I do believe the table's fixed because of the wiring in it. We don't have too many options moving the table. That's come up before, so.
I think staff uses that table for meetings quite a lot, actually.
I know, we use it first.
Not just you, but HR and
Yes.
employee orientation, and there are all kinds of meetings that happen there that we don't know about.
Good to know.
I need to ask, is there any possibility of an office downstairs for our fourth person?
I do not know. I don't have an answer to that.
Katie, could we put a small office like this downstairs?
I believe they could be stretched for space down there.
Everybody's stretched. We're stretched here.
Yeah, but that would isolate whoever we put down there and kind of make the functioning of this group less efficient.
That would be a concern.
Jump in here, and I'm not familiar with the conversations that have been had already, but I do know that in the past year, the planning department absorbed the transportation planning function with Frank Doldo and 2 additional staff there, so that space that was once available downstairs has been subsumed by the transportation planning function that was previously in Department of Social Services.
I see Megan's come on.
Yeah, no, Lisa covered what I was going to mention, that we have fit in additional staff in the interim. And that we also, one portion of our office, we do have an agreement with the ITCDC with our MPO, so we do have to provide them space as well.
Okay. I think I wanted to ask that question because I suspect if we ever build a center of government building, that this legislature will need to take over all the space downstairs.
Oh, happy day.
That's just my prognostication, I guess. Well, what's the pleasure? You'd like to see us do this, is that right, Katrina?
I would. I think we do need that additional space for the 4th position.
Anyone want to make a motion on this? Greg?
Yeah, I'll move that we, I don't know if we don't have a cost number, but move forward with this if the money's somewhere in the budget or if we're going to need to come back for a budget request.
Might have to be contingent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll just assume it's going to come out of contingent.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, I'd move that we construct a small office spaces.
This is open top, right? So we're not going to have a problem with the ventilation duct over there?
I believe it's going to be similar to what we have here. Ours are not open top, but.
Yeah, but I don't know if, see, there's a ventilator right over there.
I don't have all those answers, Mike. I would have to defer to Aral.
Okay.
But.
I second the motion.
Moved and seconded to proceed with this? Discussion further? Those in favor? Those opposed? Randy's opposed. Randy, you didn't say why you're opposed.
Those places are packed. It's packed over here often. I'm just trying to, maybe that's not the spot for it. I don't know. We're condensing space. I'd like to see more people come, not less. So maybe in here somewhere, but
I agree with you, but I don't know what the option is here.
doesn't matter, pass anyways.
We're just told we couldn't put them downstairs, so. All in favor? Or did we vote?
Already
I'm
voted.
sorry, we voted. That's right. Randy said no. So 4-1.
Vote early and often.
Is there early voting? Thank you. Anything else, Katrina, on that?
Nope, that's it. Thank you very much.
Well, let's go to Frank on transportation planning. Morning, Frank.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just here for to get your approval on moving forward on the 2021 contract with Gadabout. They did provide the service. I'm just getting past stuff up to speed. And this was one thing that was not executed. It was budgeted for. The expense wasn't taken out in 2021 because there was no contract executed. So this is getting done what was needed to get done in 2021, getting approval to execute the contract, and then paying for the service from 2021.
So we're just papering it over, right?
Excuse me, I didn't hear that.
We're just papering over what's already been done, basically.
Correct.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
Like a post-dated
Randy,
check.
Randy, what, are you moving? Let's get it on the table. Randy's moving. Is there a second? Seconded by Deborah. Discussion. Go ahead, Randy.
Yes, so is the money already been paid or not?
It has not.
And how much is it?
It's $105,000, I believe.
Is this,
So we don't do rollover anymore, right? So this is going to have to come out of, where does this money come out of?
I think this comes out of grant money, though, doesn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, so because there's no impact on the budget, my understanding is the revenue that is collected will be booked to this year and the expense will be booked to this year. And because we're collecting on old grant money, there's going to be no negative effect on the budget. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lee, we put it on the table, the resolution. Do you have any questions?
No.
Are we ready to vote? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Frank. Public Safety Building Project. We have a resolution. It has been passed by, didn't we pass this at the legislature?
Yes.
So do we need to pass it here?
No.
Okay, it's just for information purposes. All right.
I would like to add that actually Travis Brooks was on the radio, WHC this morning, talking about this project and the working group, and it was a good interview. So,
Glad to hear that. Public needs to know about it. Anything else on the Public Safety Building Project at this point? Lisa? So where do we go from here on this, with trying to get some, this timeline and the estimates?
I had asked Arel to put together a timeline as requested at I guess it was the joint committee.
Correct.
Of both the center of government and the public safety building projects, and bring that to the October Facilities and Infrastructure Committee. So he's working on that.
All right, that sounds good. Anything else on this at this point? We had a long discussion at our joint meeting.
The only other thing that I would mention is that, and as I stated Tuesday during the budget presentation, is that currently the decision to move forward with public safety was happening at a time prior to our finalizing the capital plan. There wasn't, well, the project approval request form did not include the schematic in 2024. We put it in for 2025. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that.
Okay, is public safety aware of that?
Well, I mentioned it during my budget presentation Tuesday night, so the legislature, I think everyone is aware of that. I can mention it again at this afternoon Public Safety Committee.
Thank you. Just make sure they're, because this timeline, we don't have anything on paper yet, and let's make sure folks are kept up to speed as much as possible, please.
Yep.
For transportation, normally I try to report on the ITCTC meetings. Both myself and Randy were unable to make the last ITCTC meeting. I think Katie stood in for us. Katie, are you there? Would you like to mention anything about that?
I am here, but I actually had to participate in an interview, so Megan actually attended for me, so
well,
she can
thank
speak.
you. I didn't hear that part. I heard them ask if Katie could do it, but I didn't hear Megan. Megan, thank you for going for us.
My pleasure. I will say, all of the agenda items were approved. There were a couple of small amendments, and in the go around, a lot of projects getting ready to, move forward and talk about the projects happening in the different municipalities and some of the things TCAT is experiencing. And I think Frank can give you greater details if you'd like on any of those as well. But yeah, no, it was. Thanks for letting me sit in. It was great to see some faces I haven't seen in a while.
Well, it's a good organization, and we hear a lot. I like to, even though I'm on the planning committee, I like to go to the other committees sometimes because you hear a lot of what the projects are happening on that one too, and they're always open to the public, so anybody can come. Thank you for doing that. Any questions, Randy?
I just want to add that Newfield's going through some upgrades in their sewer and water, and Fernando actually went out and visited with Newfield supervisor and people to give some insight on what grants they could look for, and Newfield did get quite a few grants for some of this stuff, but I appreciate Fernando going in and meet with them. So,
thank you. Jeff is with us this morning. Jeff, you didn't have any items on our agenda, but would you like to talk to us?
Sure. Trying to find my button behind my monitor. Just everything's going well. We're trying to button up a lot of projects right now. There is a transfer for road striping in the end of the packet there.
Right.
It's been a busy year in that aspect of our road work, striping multiple times, a lot of different roads. As with everything, that process is getting more and more expensive. It is getting a little more money input into next year's budget, so we are adjusting. But this transfer will get some more striping out there. Very important to the more roads we are able to chip seal and overlay with blacktop and things, the more times we have to restripe things, and then also keeping up in the roads that we aren't doing this year, that has to be redone periodically as well. That's it, Mike. Thank you.
Anyone want to talk to Frank? Go ahead, Randy.
hey Jeff, how are you?
Good.
Is there an update on what's going on at the intersection up around Forest Home Drive and what's going on up there?
Craddock and Pleasant Grove.
Pleasant Grove, I'm sorry, yep.
There's a meeting scheduled, but there really is no update. I don't believe that anything has transpired in that area. There's a meeting coming up.
Yeah, the meeting is
Monday next week.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, I should mention that. It's a pretty good sized group.
Maybe let Shauna
We've had
speak to that.
trouble.
She just walked in, because she's been trying very hard to set that meeting up with the town of Ithaca and Cornell. Do you want to mention where we are with that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm happy to. So after 5 doodle polls that Katrina and I tried to put out there, and each time we'd get a winner, schedule a Zoom link or schedule a location, one of the stakeholders would come back and say that they can't do the time. And so at this point, Cornell is going to organize the meeting, and I think they've thrown out about 14 or 15 dates, and none of those work. So I think we're towards the end of November, and we'll see if we can get a meeting in 2023.
2024 is right around the corner.
It is around the corner. Yep.
Randy, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Jeff, please tell your crews how pleased we are with the work they've been doing. And we know they've been working hard, and we're glad they're doing such a good job keeping our roads safe. I was really impressed with the work that was done on Warren Road north of Route 13 in front of the airport entrance and beyond. I think that was one of the nicest paving jobs I've seen lately that was done up there.
Thank you. I tell them that a lot, but it's nice to, I'll pass that on as well, and we really appreciate it.
I have a question from Greg.
Yeah. Hi, Jeff. Quick question. I don't have my county road map in front of me, and I don't have them all memorized yet. Is Pine Tree is Pine Tree a county road?
Pine Tree is a county road.
What's the update? Because that was supposed to be opened, I think, right on the 15th again.
And 15, yeah.
And what's the update on the status of that?
They're fine grading for paving. If it's not paved tomorrow, it'll be done and open next week sometime. And weather coming in and things like that can always slide, but that's the plan. It's very close to being finished. So to update you on those culverts, that project, there's 2 left. There's one right around the corner on the end of Ellis Hollow. Is a culvert just upstream of the one they're completing now. And there's one on Peruville. Those are the last 2 culverts out of the 4 culverts that need to be done. They are running up against a timeline with the DEC permit, enabling them to work on the Peruville Road culvert. They've asked DEC for an extension and have not heard back yet. If they are given an extension, they are going to Peruville next. If they are not, then they're going to go to Ellis Hollow next, right after Pine Tree.
Okay, and the work on Ellis Hollow is a town road?
Ellis Hollow is a county road.
Or county road too, okay.
Yeah, that's right there at the same intersection. It's the same tributary that flows through the Pine Tree.
So if we go there next, it's closure from Pine Tree to Game Farm on Ellis Hollow, is that my understanding?
It'll be closed from Pine Tree to Game Farm. The detour route will be Game Farm Road.
Okay.
For Ellis Hollow.
Got it, okay. But otherwise, they're going to Peruville next. And when would you expect them to do Ellis Hollow if they get the DEC extension?
Their hope is still to get all the projects completed this year. The only reason they wouldn't, they would not be able to complete Peruville Road because of the DEC not allowing them to do an extension, enabling them to do the creek work in the water.
Got it.
Just to schedule wise, they didn't want to, but they did slide their schedule. One reason they're not done yet is because Cornell move-in was the same week that they wanted to start this Pine Tree Road project. They did change it from like Monday. They ended up starting like Thursday. So they gave them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to get their move-in dates for Cornell. So that kind of pushes everything. And so they're not too far behind schedule. And the other projects are both approximately 6 weeks each for completion.
So you suspect Ellis Hollow would be closed for 6 weeks between Pine Tree and Game Farm?
Correct.
Okay.
Which is about the time frame that Pine Tree has been closed. It's a little longer than 6 weeks, like you said.
Sure. I appreciate the work getting done. Living on that side of town, it definitely does. It's not about challenges for me, but it makes navigating in that area pretty interesting, especially with some of the road work Cornell's got going on. And will be nice to see that completed and fully functioning and operational again.
Yeah, we like it's said often, we have 2 seasons, winter and construction. And yeah. I know it's not just us, and we do try and coordinate things. You know, you have State Street Hill, you have some gas line replacement out on 79. When someone comes into Tompkins County, everyone thinks everything is Tompkins County, so we field a lot of emails on all the various road projects, but we do our best.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I know the work is necessary, so thanks for getting that done.
And the good news is that according to my weather app, it's going to rain over the weekend, but Friday and next week is clear.
In case you're wondering about the weather.
That's the way it is. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Terry, do you have anything for us more?
I do not.
Okay, thanks for being here. Let's go to these resolutions regarding TCAT. First one is 11938, recommendation for appointment to Tompkins County Consolidated Area Transit Board of Directors. This is the appointment of Shauna Black to fill a vacancy. Moved by Lee, seconded by Greg. Discussion on this.
Do we need to go into executive session to talk about this Shauna Black person?
No, let's just talk about it publicly.
Okay.
I'm used to it. I'll take it.
Shauna, thank you for being willing to step in and do this. That's a very important role.
Pleasure.
Those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. And then we have Resolution 11939, recommendation for appointment to Tompkins County Consolidated Area Transit Board of Directors. This is for Frank Proto with a term expiring 12/31/26. Lee's moved that, seconded by Deborah. Any discussion on this one? I would just say that I think generally we think Frank's been doing a very good job on TCAT.
Good to see him still involved.
He's really valuable on that board. He's the only institutional memory really that we have left, and he's very dedicated.
I'm glad to hear that institutional memory counts sometimes. All those
times.
On the resolution, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Let's go to the minutes of August 17th. Someone want to move those? Greg, seconded by Randy. Discussion on the minutes. Ready to vote? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. And Jeff mentioned about the budget adjustment. Any questions on that information item? Okay. Anything else for the good of the order today? Well, I think we can adjourn. Thanks. Thanks to everyone who's been here and helped us. Charlene, you're here. Was there anything you'd like to say to us? All right. Thanks. Nice to see you. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Taylor.